Hello everyone, in this video, this class, we'll take up the dry test for all the basic radicals or cations. Remember in the last few classes, we are done with the wet test of all the radicals. And in today's class, we'll start and in all likelihood complete all the dry tests for the basic radicals. Now the first test which comes to mind is the very popular flame test. You know, flame test is performed for alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, members of group 1, group 2, which were 1A or 2A in the old periodic table. Now if you recall, in periodic table, in periodic properties, we know that S block elements, group 1, group 2, alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, these are the ones with minimum ionization energy. So the temperature of the flame is good enough to excite electrons to higher orbits, and naturally when the electrons come back to the ground state, they'll emit radiation or frequencies which lies within the VIBGYOR. So a characteristic color in the flame will help me in identifying or detecting the corresponding radical. So this is the simple chemistry behind it. Again, if you recall, out of the periodic properties which we learned, particularly ionization energy, it decreases down the group, increases left to right. Out of lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, I have kept francium or radium away because they are radioactive. Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, alkali metals, beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, group 2A, alkaline earth metals. These are the two which do not give flame test. Please remember this, it's a popular question. Beryllium, magnesium do not give flame test. I repeat, down the group ionization energy decreases, left to right it increases. So naturally, beryllium, magnesium among S block, top right, it decreases down the group, increases left to right. तो 2 का आयनाइजेशन एनर्जी 1 से ज़्यादा होगा, नीचे कमता है, तो 2 का जो टॉप पर है बेरिलियम मैग्नीशियम, आउट ऑफ दिस लॉट विल हैव मैक्सिमम आयनाइजेशन एनर्जी एंड दे विल नॉट गिव यू अ कलर in the VIBGYOR. So they do not give a flame test. Otherwise, we take a platinum wire. Now platinum wire being a little pricey, we can also take an alloy called nichrome wire, and that wire is put into HCl and then taken to the flame. That practice is repeated a few times till there is no color because of some other factors or the material of the wire. So what we do is, we take a platinum wire, dip it in HCl, and then it's taken to the flame till there is no color observed. I'll just want to note, you know, this is possible for these two because their ionization energy values are low, so the electrons can be easily excited. Then till there is no color, you keep on doing it, and then you stick a little amount of salt to the moistened flame because of dilute HCl. Then again you treat it with dilute HCl and you take it to the flame and you note the color in the flame. That color will help you in identifying these radicals. The acid taken is always HCl. The acid taken is always HCl because chlorides are volatile. Chlorides are volatile, thermally unstable. They are volatile, thermally unstable. Chlorides are volatile, thermally unstable. You do not take sulfuric acid. Because sulfuric acid is thermally very stable. Sulfates will not dissociate. So either the metal or their chlorides in the flame, the electrons could be excited. Chlorides will vaporize and flame test is possible. Sulfates, you know, will not dissociate. You do not take sulfuric acid for the same reason. And the color of the flame will help you in identifying the radical. I've told you beryllium, magnesium do not give the test because out of this lot, these are the two having maximum ionization energy. Now, before we go into the corresponding colors, which I'll tell you in a little while, let's also learn a little bit about the flame. There are some recent questions which is about the flame of the Bunsen burner. And naturally, in the chemistry lab, you would have seen, allow me to rub this, that the Bunsen burner flame, generally has a characteristic outer edge and an inner edge. So if I represent a flame like this, the outer edge is reddish orange flickering and the inner one is blue in color. The flame generally burns a little higher above the Bunsen burner. You know, that is something which you see in the normal LPG burner as well, because the fuel comes out, you know, in the gaseous form. The flame will be burning a little higher up than the burner. The inner part, blue part, is called the reducing flame. The inner part is called the reducing flame. The outer part, which is flickering red or orange, yellow, orange, red, is the oxidizing flame. Now this is reducing, also called luminous, because see, as you move up, you get more air. Naturally, near the source of the fuel, the burner, near the source of the fuel, you will have more fuel here, less oxygen. As you go higher up, you will get more oxygen here. So naturally, it's burning completely. Because it's burning completely, there is more oxygen. It's also called non-luminous. And the inner part of the flame, which looks blue, this looks blue, is reducing because of either the fuel particles or carbon particles. You know, generally carbon particles which are due to incomplete oxidation of the fuel. Naturally, the inner cone will be containing some unburnt fuel or carbon particles, so that will be blue and reducing in nature. Because of these carbon particles, they'll have a characteristic blue color. It's called luminous flame. The outer flickering part is oxidizing because you have more oxygen here. Somewhere around the tip of the inner flame, around this region, you should expect maximum temperature. This is the region where you have maximum temperature. Here the fuel versus oxygen ratio is ideal. Around this point, the fuel versus oxygen ratio is ideal. So here you will have maximum temperature. Naturally, moving down, you will have more fuel, less oxygen. So again, that will be a lower temperature. Moving up, there again will be a reduction in temperature. This is the hottest part of the flame. We need to talk about these two parts of the flame, because you know different tests will be done in different parts of the flame. For instance, flame test is done generally in the oxidizing flame, and around this region of the flame where the temperature is reasonably high. The lower part, somewhere here, you should expect minimum temperature. So these are some recent questions which feature in the entrance exams. So this is the portion where the fuel oxygen ratio is ideal. Here the temperature is maximum. Moving up or down, you will have lower temperature. It will be minimum, somewhere near the bottom. Oxidizing because there is more oxygen here. Reducing because here you will have unburnt fuel and carbon particles. Naturally a blue color, which is called the luminous flame. Now in flame test, once you put the salt or its chloride to the flame, lithium will give you a characteristic crimson red color. Sodium has a very popular golden yellow flame. Potassium, there is a color lilac, which is basically a shade of blue or violet. It's written violet in NCERT, so you'll want to know it violet. Rubidium is reddish blue. This is red blue. Cesium is blue. Beryllium, magnesium do not give any color. With calcium, there is very popular brick red. Strontium is crimson red again. And barium, there is a very popular apple green color. You will want to recall these colors. I'm not going into any stupid trick to memorize this. We do not need a mnemonic because these are very popular specific colors, and you would want to recall all these colors individually. Calcium, it's always called brick red. Lithium, strontium, it's also always called crimson red. Sodium, golden yellow. Potassium, lilac, it's called violet. It's written violet in the NCERT. Rubidium, red blue. Cesium, blue. Now naturally francium, radium are radioactive, so I've kept them away from the league. Beryllium, magnesium, they do not give flame test because they have maximum ionization energy. So this is what we need to know as far as the color of various S block metals are concerned. After flame test, the next test which we talk about is the borax bead test. Again, it might not be included in everybody's board or school curriculum, but it's a very popular test. Borax is a very popular compound. Borax is sodium tetraborate decahydrate, Na2B4O7.10H2O. This when heated gives you Na2B4O7 without the water crystallization, and this on further heating will give you NaBO2 and B2O3. This is sodium metaborate, and boric oxide is popularly referred as boric anhydride. It's popularly referred as boric anhydride because this with water will give you boric acid. Now these two together, sodium metaborate and B2O3, will give you a particular glassy bead. It will have a glassy bead-like appearance. Yet again you use a platinum wire here. That platinum wire is folded into a loop. It's folded into a loop, and in this loop you attach a small grain of, this is crystalline grainy structure, so you put a small grain or crystal of borax here, that when produced to flame naturally on heating will swell. This will first of all lose its water of crystallization, and then it will swell up to give you a glassy bead. The glassy bead is because of both metaborate and boric anhydride. And then upon this glassy bead which is formed here, it will be a glassy bead, a small sphere-like thing. To this you stick a small amount of salt and you observe the color. Now this color is naturally due to the colored metaborates. This is due to the colored metaborates. You perform this test both in the reducing flame and the oxidizing flame. In reducing flame and oxidizing flame, the colors could be different. I'll quickly talk about it. But first of all, this is the basic chemistry, heating effect of borax. This compound is called borax. On heating, it will give you a glassy bead because of both these compounds, metaborate and boric anhydride. And when a small amount of salt is attached or sticked here, taken to the flame, you see a color because of colored metaborates. There are popular charts given in most of the textbooks. It's not like we need to know the color when it's taken to a reducing or oxidizing flame, both in hot or cold conditions. You don't need to mug up that chart. What you need to know is the chemistry behind it. You need to know that the color is because of the colored metaborates. And then the different colors in the reducing or oxidizing flame could be because of, suppose you have copper with NaBO2 and B2O3 initially giving you COBO2. Now naturally this is CuBO2 twice, so it's cupric, and this when taken in the reducing flame, the carbon in the reducing flame can reduce it to CuBO2. So this is cupric metaborate with a different color, cuprous metaborate with a different color. Now we do not mug up all the colors in the oxidizing flame and in the reducing flame. We remember the color are because of colored metaborates, cupric and cuprous. This can be further reduced to copper. This can be further reduced to copper. So this might give you a tinge of red after a little while. With copper, the color generally associated is green when hot, blue when cold. With copper, the color is green when hot, blue when cold. And you don't need to mug up the entire table for different radicals. For a couple of radicals, two being very significant, chromium and cobalt, you will want to remember the colors. Chromium, it's always green, and cobalt, it's always blue. Chromium salts are green, cobalt salts are blue. The colors are because of their corresponding metaborates. Different colors in oxidizing and reducing flame because it could be the higher and the lower oxidation state of the metaborate. This is the chemistry behind borax bead test, and I think this will take care of all the questions which feature in different exams. Very similar to borax bead test, you have a microcosmic salt bead test. You will want to copy this at your convenience, and I repeat, very similar to borax bead test, you have a microcosmic salt bead test. Again, it depends whether this is there in your school curriculum, board practicals syllabus or not. But microcosmic salt bead test is sodium ammonium biphosphate. One way to recall the formula is always go by the oxidation number. This is +1, this is +1, this is naturally -2, HPO4 -2. So this compound is called microcosmic salt, and this on heating will lose ammonia, and so it loses ammonia and it loses water. Now when you remove ammonia and you remove H2O, the only thing left will be NaPO3. I'm just telling you ways how you kind of recall the formulae. So this is going to give you the glassy bead. This time the glassy bead will be because of sodium metaphosphate, and yet again this bead which is obtained on top or the loop of this platinum wire. To this you attach a small amount of salt, you take it to the flame, and the color is due to colored metaphosphates. Yet again for copper you will want to know the color green when hot, blue when cold, chromium green, cobalt blue. So this much only. You don't need to mug up that entire table or chart again. That table or chart could be recalled or mugged up for individual choice, but generally these are the colors which are required, and the questions are generally based upon the heating effect and the compounds which are responsible for the colors. Naturally for both borax bead and microcosmic salt bead test, chromium green, cobalt blue is a common question. Very rarely manganese gives you a violet amethyst color, but again that is very rare. Otherwise there will be more radicals giving these tests, but we want to know it only for the radicals which we can recall comfortably and which will be required for our entrance exams. So this far and no further, microcosmic salt bead test. Couple of more tests for specific radicals. Next one is charcoal cavity test. The next one is charcoal cavity test. Charcoal cavity test. Yet again depends whether it's in your school syllabus or not. I recall doing it when I was in class 11-12. What you do in charcoal cavity test is, instead of an apparatus or a glass rod, you take a block of charcoal, which is an allotrope of carbon, and you make a groove into it. You dig a groove into it, you make a groove into it. In this groove or cavity, you put some small amount of salt in this cavity, because this is a block of black charcoal in which you have made a groove using a knife maybe, or something pointed. You will want to groove a cavity into it. And in this cavity, you will want to put a small amount of salt, a little bit of sodium carbonate solution, a few drops of water, so that it sticks to this. And then you take it to the reducing flame. There is a particular instrument called blowpipe. At one end you can blow air into it so that you could direct the flame to this cavity. Either you would have seen this in the chemistry lab, or at times you see it with the local goldsmiths. The local goldsmiths which perform some small welding in golden ornaments and all. अब हिंदी में उसको फूकनी बोलते हैं, फूकनी। एक ऐसा लंबा सा ट्यूब जैसा रहता है, एक एंड पे उसमें हवा फूकते हैं, और उस हवा को फूकने से क्या कर सकते हो तुम कि इस फ्लेम का जो इनर पार्ट है, you blow air using that blow pipe, so that you can direct this part of the flame, to this cavity. So you direct it to this cavity, and this is particularly produced to the red flame. So here you have that salt in that cavity, and you want it to be subjected to the reducing flame. Before I go there, sodium carbonate. We saw it for soda extract process as well. Naturally, when you treat a salt with sodium carbonate, you get a carbonate, and carbonates are thermally unstable. Suppose if it's a copper salt with sodium carbonate, you could prepare copper carbonate now, which on heating gives you copper oxide. Now this is why you want to use the reducing flame. You want to direct the reducing flame to the cavity, because this copper oxide will get reduced to copper, which is a red color. So naturally in this cavity, if you see reddish tinge, copper tamba red hota hai. So when you see something colored, you can predict it's copper. Charcoal cavity, because you groove a cavity into a charcoal block, to which a little bit of sodium carbonate is added to convert the cation to its carbonate, heated to oxide, and then it's put to reducing flame because you want this reduction to happen. The only limitation is this will work only for colored metals. This will work only for colored metals or colored radicals, like copper is red. In case it's not colored, suppose it's zinc or aluminium. Zinc, aluminium are colorless, white. So when it's for a colored thing, charcoal cavity test will do. In case the natural color of the metal like aluminium, zinc is colorless, there's a small modification. Along with the salt, sodium carbonate, drops of water, you add a bit of cobalt nitrate. Then it's called cobalt nitrate test. Remember, it's cobalt nitrate test when you are doing it for colorless or otherwise white metal. Now cobalt nitrate will bring color into it, because like a normal nitrate, it will dissociate into an oxide, nitrogen dioxide and oxygen. I'm going to talk about this. Most of the nitrites will dissociate into oxide, nitrogen dioxide and oxygen. And cobalt oxide, suppose if it's zinc and sodium carbonate would have given you zinc carbonate, which would have given you zinc oxide. This with cobalt oxide will give you COZnO2, cobalt zincate. It's a popular green color called Rinmann's green. Similarly, if it's Al2O3, you will get COAl2O4. It's a popular shade of blue which is called Thenard's blue. So know these names. Thenard's blue for aluminium, Rinmann's green for zinc. For aluminium, I did tell you that I'll give you a dry test sooner than later. So this is that popular dry test for aluminium. And now you do not want reduction. So once it's cobalt nitrate test, you will do all of this. In the oxidizing flame. You will not use that blowpipe. And you will not want to treat it to the reducing flame. Naturally, because here no reduction is required. Charcoal cavity test was done in the reducing flame because you had a reduction required there, whereas cobalt nitrate test is done in the oxidizing flame. These are the two compounds which you will want to know. Although this is also done for manganese and tin, but I told you I always limit my discussions to cases which are relevant for your exams, and I think this will help you in solving all the questions on dry test. When we meet next, we can have some tests based on physical appearance or smell or simple heating effect without using any particular acid. But again, we'll come to that when the time is right, and that will be followed by problem solving. Make sure you recall all these tests properly because they can be converted to marks right away. It's about knowing which radical gives which test and which color. Simple as it looks. So this much for the time being. Thank you so much. See you in the next class.